All right,
Okay.
Mr. President.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, members of the City Council for assembling this afternoon for this special call meeting. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our city clerk.
This is a special called meeting of the Mobile City Council, Friday, May 1st. We have roll call with President Manzi,
Here.
Vice President Small,
Here.
Councilmember Richardson,
Here.
Councilmember Williams,
Here.
Councilmember Daves,
Here.
Councilmember Rich,
Here.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Statement by our president.
Good afternoon. In response to national, state, and local guidance due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the Alabama Open Meetings Act and the governor's supplemental emergency proclamation, we are meeting remotely. While we are all in different places, we are able to participate as if we were all in the council chambers at City Hall, and in keeping with the requirements of the Alabama Open Meetings Act. The public is still able to observe the meeting through the live stream. All items we will address, pardon me?
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought somebody was, all items we will address during this meeting are either necessary to respond to COVID-19 or necessary.
Somebody's, everybody mute their mics like we are
necessary to perform essential minimum functions of the city. The public is still able to present comments to the council by emailing them to cityclerk@citymobile.org up to 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Public comments, which will be acknowledged as received during the meeting, distributed to council members, and included in the meeting minutes. As always, the meeting is live streamed and can be viewed through the city's website or on the council's Facebook page. Thank you for joining us and for your continued interest in our municipal government.
Communications from the mayor.
Mr. West or Mr. Mayor, is there anything y'all would like to? Anyone on that?
Got it. Bad. I was muted. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. So I certainly appreciate Council President Lavon Manzi agreeing to call this meeting and those that had to concur with doing it. This conversation that led up to this meeting really started a couple of weeks ago as we came to realize there were some individual business owners and individuals who had fallen through the cracks from the closure guidelines set by the governor's safe at home order. And they actually did not qualify for loans or any of the grants that were being made available. Now, as we listened to those conversations and understood their plight, a hope had been that in the governor's safer at home order, that it would be addressed so there would be a definitive point in time where they knew that they may get some form of relief as going back to work. Well, since that didn't happen, we and then the administration got in high gear, starting to determine how can we help them individually, specifically the businesses. So where it started out with barbers and salon owners, it evolved into what are called the high-risk businesses, and the high-risk term comes from the governor's orders. So as we continue to evolve in this process, we realized that in lieu of a possible loan program, that would be better and simpler to do a grant program. So we've identified some filters that we think will help identify those that should qualify for a grant from the city of Mobile. And those filters are that they have to be a business they have to be a business in the city of Mobile, and they have to have a current city of Mobile's license. They must not have received or been awarded a PPE loan or unemployment compensation. And the business will have to be deemed a high-risk business as closed by the state order. So that's kind of that is the background. And when we identified the number of businesses, we went through the procedure of looking at all business licenses, the qualifying factors of how businesses are, how they're categorized within the city. And in doing so, we started projecting how much money possibly the city would expend in such a program. The parameters ended up that we thought that we should suggest to the council that we transfer $500,000 set aside for the for the distribution of grants to those who qualify. And that the qualifying amounts would range from $1,500 per business to $2,500 per business. In the documentation that was created by attorneys Ricardo Woods, you have received, and Flo Kessler and Chris Arledge, you've seen the documentation specifically in Exhibit 2. It enumerates those businesses that qualify. So I will leave my opening comments to that, because when it comes to do we have the money available and, further qualifications of the businesses, I'm going to ask Paul Wesch, Ricardo Woods, Anitra Henderson, to weigh, and Flo Kessler, to weigh in to answer any and all questions you may have. So again, thank you very much for you taking time on Friday afternoon. If this was not an urgent situation, we would not have asked for this special call meeting, but there are people that have not had a paycheck in at least 7 weeks, or some cases longer, and they're getting desperate. And the quicker we act, the quicker we'll be able to give them some relief. Thank you very much.
Any questions of Mayor Stimpson and or any of the staff that he just referenced?
I have a question. I'm not sure if it's to Paul or to the mayor. That's okay.
I don't have, go, yes, ma'am.
Okay. The range is 1,000 to 2.5, right? Is that what you said the business could, or the individual could receive? Can you tell me or exactly what amounts go in what denominations, and how is that attributed to the program?
We're actually talking about a range of $1,500 to $2,500.
15, okay.
Yes, and it was arrived at, certainly not science, it's kind of an art. It was sized with reference to what the average sizes of employees or independent contractors are in most of the businesses that were identified. We did some investigation of the average size of barbers and cosmetologists, and it was in the 2 to 3 chair range. Some, as you know, have many more chairs than that. Some are, single chairs, but the average was at the low end. So it's designed to go to businesses, but to reflect to some degree the number of displaced personnel that made their livings there. And so the range would, or the award would increase as the number of personnel is increased, but with a cap of 2,500.
So in other words, if there's an owner of a barbershop or a salon and they have a technician that's actually pays them rent and some overhead, but it's its own business, could the two of them apply? One as a single proprietor and the other as the owner of the business? Because it would each have their own, I'm assuming, their own business license.
If they had their own business license, they could. That's not the normal way that it's done in those businesses.
I see.
We elected to stay with licensed businesses. Of course, you can tell from the discussion that what we trust would happen is that those business owners, knowing that their award was sized with reference to their independent contractors, would share that money with their independent contractors. For example, take a very normal circumstance where a beauty parlor owner is also one of the stylists and then leases out 2 chairs to others.
Yes.
If she were awarded $1,500, we would hope that she would share that equally among the 3 of them.
Okay. And so you're saying up to 25, the business can have up to 25 employees? Is that what I read correctly?
Well, I believe the resolution says that the business could not have more than 25. We seriously doubt whether any of these businesses
No, I know
will
this,
have-
but would that
Yeah.
be the most than the 2.5K? That would be the most somebody would get because they had so many employees to divvy out the money to?
That's right.
Okay.
I will tell you that one of the thoughts was that the larger of these types of businesses, the more likely you are to find a true employment situation where, at least to some extent, the business had applied for and received an award from the federal government under the payroll protection plan.
Right, and on the form, they have to say yay or nay. I mean, that would automatically toss it out. They couldn't apply if they got the PPP, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And also the same with any unemployment for the people that work for them?
Correct.
Or is it just for the individual who owns the business not applying for the unemployment?
Under the simplified form, as you see, we are asking, generally speaking, whether anybody there received unemployment compensation. We know, however, that there could be circumstances that you have just described that
Sure.
are somewhat gray. What we attempted to do was to make sure that in order to get one of these grants quickly, that these people would not be required to provide supporting documentation. We're basically taking their averment that they meet these requirements.
Mm-hmm.
We feared that if we asked for underlying documentation to any extent beyond the application, that it would slow down the process, not only because they would have to supply that documentation, but then citizens would expect that we would independently verify. And we simply don't have the time if the effort is to get this money into the hands of those who need it quickly.
Okay. I know there'll be an eventual list on PPE. They can't do it now because it's proprietary with everybody's bank who got the loans through the government. But eventually there will be a list that could be checked against somebody taking funds that they basically shouldn't have gotten. I mean, there could be a way to double check. It would be after the fact, but if you say that they're certifying they didn't, I guess you could go and get it if they did get the other loan, because the list will go public at some point because it's all public money.
Yes, ma'am, and we are not foreclosing that possibility, especially given how most things are discovered here, which is not by the awarding agency, but by an unhappy fellow worker. So
Exactly.
we don't anticipate doing that, but you are correct. That will be available at some point.
It
in the
is.
future.
It could be verified. It doesn't have to be to release the check, but after the fact, it could be verified. So it would keep people hopefully straight up about how they fill out the form.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. That's it.
Any other questions of either Matt Stimson or Mr. West?
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes, I would like to ask Paul, how did you create this list? Was this list created from our own records?
The list that you see as an attachment to the resolution was prepared with reference to the governor's order. So she had 3 categories of closed, higher risk, non-essential businesses. And so what you see here is almost all of those listed businesses. And then what we will have as a reference here to compare to those job class or those business classifications are our business license records, because we code them according to the type of business that they're in, and they correspond to the list that the governor provided.
Okay, well, you answered. I was mainly concerned about grantees, and you were saying you all got that list from the business license records.
Yes, sir. The Revenue Department produced those to help us size what we thought the number of potential applicants might be.
And you know, we also gave them some additional time to pay for their license for this year. So, and I think we ought to look at if they had a license last year rather than this year, because too many things has happened this year. We've closed City Hall, this, that, and the other. So I think we ought to, if they had a license for 2019, they ought to be considered. Okay, and going further, in my tenure since 1997, I haven't seen anything of this magnitude done by the city. As a matter of fact, we were told by our attorney that you couldn't give individuals any city revenue. So I'm going to ask our own attorney, Chris, have you read these 2 resolutions?
Yes, sir, I have.
Do you believe that these are legal resolutions worthy of the council's consideration?
Yeah, the 2 resolutions, you got the budget one, which is just moving money around basically, which you definitely, there's no question about that.
Yeah, we can do that.
The other resolution is modeled after this section, Amendment 772, which is also known as Section 9401 of the Alabama Constitution, which creates a process where if a public purpose is found, and in that particular section, it's talking about economic development, that it can be done, and this resolution does mirror that. So if it's something the council wants to do, I think it fits the criteria.
Okay, I want you to hear that, because I don't want to be challenged by this and for the public not knowing, coming from our attorney, that what we're doing is legal.
Yeah, I can expand on that. There's a court case that basically talking about what a public purpose is, it gives it a very broad interpretation. And the courts, under that case, it was called Slauson, the courts will assume that a determination of a public purpose by the governing body is conclusive, absent compelling evidence to the contrary. Now, what the evidence is, depends on the case, but and it's also something that's for the general welfare of the community.
Okay, well, I'm satisfied. That's good enough for me.
If I could weigh in, mostly based on what Fred said about the criteria of being a current business license holder. I thought the date was in March, before the pandemic was basically noted, and therefore they should have been able to pay all their fees and everything. And I would be concerned that you would have a new business that wasn't there last year. You'd have a business that was out of business. And so it really has to be more current than past tense for this type of activity, I believe. And I think that's where the administration was coming from. So I wouldn't want to see that aspect of it change to drag it past another, go backwards in time to fix this problem. I think it should be current businesses up to date with their taxes and any fees that they had. Thanks.
Any other questions of either Ms. Stimpson or Mr. West?
Mr. Chair, Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
just to go back a little bit, couple of questions, just to make sure that we understand. When you start determining how much the grant each business will get, somewhere between the 1,500 and 2,500, where do you draw the line? Is it 4 employees get 2,500, or 10 employees get 2,500? Have you got that worked out?
Yes, ma'am. It is 10 and below and 10 and below and above.
And then one other thing, I think some of us received an email from a gentleman, and he brings up a point about he is a small business owner and he shut down. He's applied for the loan, but he has not heard back from the bank or federal government on the stimulus. So what happens, and this may go to what Bess had been talking about, we'll get a list, but if in the interim somebody gets their stimulus money after we've already awarded them this money, are we going to try to get that money back that we gave them on top of their PPE or PPP?
So the short answer is no. And we have anticipated that. That's why the amount is set like it is. You know that some people that may happen, but right now, either you have qualified for PPP and you've received your money or received an authorization, or the money's out. Or if you're an individual, which remember, we're not giving to individuals. I want to make that abundantly clear. We're not giving to individuals. We're going to business license holders. And when you mentioned the point of having current business license holders, that's exactly our logic, to make sure that we have people who are lawfully doing business in the city who would normally be paying into the coffers. So we anticipate that there may be some folks who fall into the category that Ms. Gregory just mentioned, but that's going to be far and few in between at this point in time, because the money for PPP is either run out or the authorizations have occurred already.
So I guess my question is, as relates to, I think Ms. Henderson made the reference of 10 and under and then 10 and over. Could you give us a little more clarity on that? And will the form, I understand that we're giving resources to business license holders, and the concept would be that they get the larger amount and then subsequently share those resources with the persons who are connected with their business. Will the form, particularly for those license holders who will get the larger amount, will the form delineate who those other persons are, so that it's kind of in black and white who will get a portion of the resources, or will they just all be lumped under the one business and that one person get the resource, and we kind of trust them to make certain that the resources trickle down to who it ought to be given to?
Let me weigh in on that. I want to repeat what Ricardo said a moment ago. We're not giving the city is not writing a check to any individuals. We are writing the check to the proprietor of the business. And we'll write a check to that proprietor somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500. And they will then distribute it to their employee, their subcontractors or their employees, okay? And the maximum that business is going to get is $2,500. It won't be, $1,500 or $2,500 for each person that may be a subcontractor in that business. Now, we've maybe said a couple of different things from different individuals here, but I want Ricardo and Flo, since it's from the legal standpoint, to make sure that what I've just said is exactly how it's going to be done.
That is correct. The eligible entities will be identified through the business license records, so that that's going to be every entity identified has a business license. The only way that would be an individual is if that's a sole proprietorship, but a sole proprietorship is a business.
Right, I understand that, but that doesn't quite answer my question. I get the way that various businesses are set up. I understand that concept. We're gonna write a check to somebody, and if it's the larger amount, they would be getting that larger amount predicated on them having a greater number of employees than those getting the smaller amount. So my question is, whether the check is written out to the yard company, to the handyman service, to the, in the name of the barbershop, somebody's gonna walk the check into the bank or either go through the drive-through and deposit the check, and some human is gonna get cash. At that point, from the application, particularly of those who will get the large amount, are they expressing, are they articulating to the city that it's, yes, I have 10 employees, it's me and these other 9 people, so that it's understood on their end that they don't just get the resource and not make certain that the other persons who are in their business get some of the resource as well.
The number of employees.
It says list the number of professionals in your business.
Say what now?
On the application, it asks for the business name, and it asks for list the number of employees in your business.
Okay,
Does the legislation speak to it being a payroll type of grant or gift, however we want to call it? Does that legislation spell out what the person who gets the check is supposed to, or the entity that gets the check? Is it clear within our legislation? Does that help it to get to the right person?
So that's actually one of the things that we considered. We talked about it aligning with PPP. That's a policy decision for you all, whether or not it pays employees and utilities. That's what we initially thought, but the lawyers didn't step into that realm. But that's not a bad thought. It's something we discussed. It may be in one of our versions, but remember, we were doing this in real time, and that is a discussion that we had more than once. People and utilities.
If the intent is to make sure that it's more of a payroll subsidy or infusion, it probably needs to be in the language of what it is we are promoting. And of course, the application is administrative, but I think it should be very clear if that's the intent, because we might have in our mind, but if it's not written out, then whoever gets the check could technically keep it, and that's not our goal. If they have, and especially because the amount changes based on how many people you have employed.
Well, and that's essentially what I was driving home. If I get the application and I list that I have 10 employees, and based off that number, I get $2,500 or whatever the highest ceiling of resource might be. So I'm the business owner. I go to the bank, I transact my business, and those other 9 employees, I'm wondering, what is the mechanism in place to make certain, particularly for those who get the greater resource based off of greater employment, what is the mechanism in place that would make certain that some of those resources go to the other persons connected with the business?
I'll answer that. The discussion revolved around, first I'll say, Councilor Rich, you're exactly right. This is meant to go to people who have not received a check, have not had a a payroll type check. It is definitely to go to individuals, not to pay other bills, so to speak. So the idea was that every barber, every business employee of the ones that are being targeted, they're going to know that the business owner has received money. And the thought was that if those employees know he's received money and it's supposed to be distributed to those employees, that if they want those employees to show back up, they better share the money or they may go somewhere else. I mean, I know that's maybe doesn't have anything in the language to do it, but the thought was there'll be enough pressure put on those who receive the check to share it with those they're working with.
With the PPP, and I'm probably going to collapse, exactly what it was, but 25% could go for a business's utilities, rents, and, any other, I guess, monthly bill. But 75% of whatever you factored to receive in your loan had to go back into people's salaries. So, and I believe the legislation was written quite distinctly that mandated, how the funds could be allocated. And we're not doing it quite on the level of the federal government, but if the intent, it needs to be in the language of what we do.
I agree.
Mr. Rich, it may need to be in the intent. What the city was concerned with on the administrative end was verification. For example, to get PPP, of course, you have to submit certified payrolls. And what the federal government mandated was that banks actually process those loans as loans and, go through an exhaustive process. And you've probably talked to some who've been through the process and have not been very happy with it. We wanted to avoid all of that. But I think you're right that placing the intent into the resolution would not be a bad idea.
That's all we want.
I think because the money has a slide to it based on employees, we're almost behooved to have to do it within the language. If it was all the same that every business got that applied, then maybe we could say what you did with it was, their business, but we're changing the amount based on the number of people. And so therefore the intent of it is to get it out to those that did not get unemployment or PPP salaries.
Mr. President.
Mr. Williams?
I think that, it could be very simple, but I know that when we get through with these 8 weeks of PPP, we are going to be required to submit some type of paperwork. They haven't defined that, but we're going to have to show that we spent the money in the 75-25 that Ms. Rich talked about. And when we do a performance contract with any other organization outside, on a normal day, we always ask that they produce something that says, after the fact, I did what you told me to do. Well, at some time when the stress is off, a reasonable amount of time, I think it would be acceptable, even in this case where we want to get the checks out now, that they got to come back and show that they did the right thing with the money. If he banked the 25 and fired all his employees, the way it's currently written, well, we hope that wouldn't happen. We hope that you would do better. And I just don't think that that's a good use of responsible use of our tax dollars. I like the program, but it does have to have some type of safeguard. That's all. Thanks.
Mr. President.
Ms. Gregory?
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Rich and Mr. Williams. I know the mayor had said, we would hope that the employers would do the right thing and the employees would know about this, and they probably will. They'll probably hear about it, but just in case they don't, we do need to make sure that the intent is within this legislation that we are putting forth, that the money has to go to payroll or whatever that wording needs to be, so that it goes to the right place, so that maybe an employer who gets the $2,500 doesn't go and use it for whatever he feels like doing rather than paying his employees.
Mr. President.
Mr. Vice President?
Yes, I do agree with that. And I also would like the clarification from Mr. West, as possible, that if a particular business owner owns 4 businesses, he will be able to apply 4 different times. Just for instance, if he owned 3 restaurants and a barber shop, will he be able to apply those 4 different times, or just only one time?
If those are separate businesses, the answer is yes.
But we didn't close restaurants. Restaurants closed on their own. You always could sell food. The state didn't close restaurants. The restaurant closed themselves. You always could sell food. Some opened up and sold carryouts. Some of them didn't do it, but they had the right to do it.
But I have some.
Beauty and barbershops had to close. Beauty and barbershops, tattoo shops, they didn't have no choice. They had to close.
Well, that is true, but I know of several instances, particularly in the district that I represent, where the owner started out opening, but because of the lack of foot traffic and the usual persons who would normally be downtown were not there, they ended up having to close. So I hope we don't preclude them, who also have faced a hard time the last 7 or 8 weeks. I had one restaurant owner, he had 5 or 6 of my dollars on his wall, and he's got my money down and paying his employees. And so I'm hopeful that we don't preclude them because they faced a rough time as well.
Mr. President, they are precluded. They are not closed by virtue of the state order.
But we have another plan.
Yeah, this is not for restaurants. If you look at Exhibit 2 on the first page, eligible businesses, it lists them, and there's nothing in there that this is relief for the restaurants. As somebody in the background said, there's another program that is not like this for the restaurants. This is for, but we're going back to the Councilman Small's comment. If there is a hair salon owner, a barbershop owner, who also owns a nail salon, and if they happen this under a different business license, and they own a tanning salon, which is a different business license, the answer is yes, he could apply 3 times based on the way this is done.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the council?
Yes, I would like to, I've heard the word application used several times. So I understand we're gonna develop a list from our business records. So am I to believe you're going to take the business records and mail out applications? So what are you going, how would the grantees apply?
Mr. Richardson, all of the business license holders have contact information with us. In most cases, that today is online. So we have their electronic addresses. In some cases, it's the old-fashioned way. Each of the businesses will be individually contacted.
Okay.
So that they know that this is out there.
All right, that's what I want to know.
I have a question? It's for legal. Chris, if our intent is to advertise this program in order to make it work as far as documentation and the reason why we're able to give these funds, public funds, to private sector, do we have to write the legislation? Do they have to see what that legislation is in the advertisement too? Or can that be crafted when we get to vote on the program itself?
The notice in the newspaper doesn't have to have every detail.
Okay.
It just has to say in reasonable detail what the program's about, what the public benefits are, and identify the business, types of business. You can't list out every business in this case, but the types of businesses that are involved. And then the legislation itself, you're calling for a public hearing that would take place, I guess, the 12th. first publication is Sunday, I believe, so that would give you the 7 days. So it could change between now and then.
Okay.
As
Okay.
long as the general concept stayed the same.
So what we need to do today is be sure to get that advertising out of the clerk's office over to the press. That's basically what you're asking us to do.
It's already there.
It's there, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
All right, any further questions? Madam City Clerk?
Adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Properly moved in second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. President, I would like to move the 2 items on the agenda be approved as essential COVID-19 items.
second,
Been properly moved in second, any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Essential COVID-19 items, 09323 amends the fiscal year 2019-2020 general fund budget to appropriate funds for an emergency grant program in response to COVID. I'm sorry, we need to suspend the rules. Essential COVID-19 items, 09323 through 41324.
Make motion for
motion to suspend the rules for immediate consideration of resolution 09323.
Second.
Properly motion in second, any discussion?
I thought we were gonna wait
What
till
about
we did the whole
324?
program.
What about 41324?
And 41324.
That's the advertising, right?
Yes.
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 call for public hearing. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
yes, I'm sorry.
Ms. Rich?
On the first item, to amend
No,
the
we're-
budget, do we really need to do that now? And I understand what the administration is saying, but no funds can be released. And basically, we would just be saying when we get ready to have the language we like and what the intent is, and it's perfectly clear from this council legislatively, then we move the money along with the program. So I think because that's still somewhat a work in progress, not the advertising part, I get that. But I think it would be nice to make both of them move together at the same time. I just clearly
Chairman,
feel strongly about that.
Mr. Chairman, I might be able to help expedite this for you all. Can you hear me?
I can't.
Yeah.
Is that Mr. Woods?
So I don't think that there's a reason to vote today on the transfer, but if it was done Tuesday, that would be a great help to the administration. The reason that we were shooting for today is because initially we thought we were gonna be able to have the public hearing on Friday. Now that your public hearing is set on May 12th, that at least gives us some more lead time, but it would help to make this decision on Tuesday. I understand you all wanna see the changes that get made to the legislation and take some time to mull this over. But the reason for the push is we have to, one, send this information out, that's one department. Two, receive the information, that's a separate department. And three, go through the processing. So the faster that happens, or the faster we know, and there's no reason to rush a vote today, but we would like it to carry over until your Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday meeting. Maybe more discussion, we'll know more by then, and at least we'll have like 4 or 5 days lead time to get our employees and departments to take all this information in and not wait another 5 or 6 days before we're able to help the people who haven't been paid for 7 weeks. It's a matter of lining up your policies and your procedures.
How's it? Let's go.
Yeah, but a question.
Ms.
Just to make
Baker?
sure, when will the advertising start then? Because it's already there waiting to go out. Don't we
That's
need to
different.
have the money transferred if we're going to advertise?
No, I wish that were true, but no, you don't have to do that. So one of these deals with, although what you're saying is advantageous, it's not necessary. I wish it were, but you can go ahead and start the publication. That deals with the program and the 7 days that we have to have. The transfer is just practically so we know we're not getting people to do work for nothing when there's other work that have been taken away from this process. It'll be a lot of legwork and a lot of lead time, and we just don't want to expend resources, human resources, that way. It's more of a practical matter.
Bess, turn your microphone on.
You're on mute, Bess. Yeah.
I'm sorry, the 772 program, does that have to also go to court after the council approves funding and the program itself, or is that different? Is that a different program?
That's different. No, ma'am, it does not have to go to court. We're not using bond funds here. That is what happens with bond funds.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that, but this is the time for the public to weigh in. So moving the money when you're first letting people know you're doing the program is, you know, as though, well, you've already moved the money. It's, you know, why would I comment? Why would I give my thoughts? Maybe I think it's too much. Maybe I think it's too little amount that we're giving. I don't know. I haven't heard from the public, but putting it in the paper gives them that ability. And that's why we wait until because it's all their money and it's moving over to private entities. And you've got to defend that. And the more that we do it correctly, the better it is for us and the outcome of it, as far as legislators, okay?
Ms. Rich.
Who's talking? Oh, it's Chris.
The newspaper notice does say 500. We did have to identify, that's part of the reasonable detail. How much money are we talking about is what the idea was. So the figure of 500 is in the newspaper notice.
Up to 500, correct? Does it say up to, or does it absolutely say we'll be doing 500?
It does say 500.
Okay. All right.
Now, we're right now discussing whether or not we're going to waive the rules. And everyone, unanimous consent still applies, and we can just.
I thought the rules were already waived.
Right, so we got a motion, a second. We're in the discussion period. Any further discussion? Absent any further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
Madam City Clerk?
09323. Is that the one? Yeah. Amend the fiscal year 2019-2020 general fund budget to appropriate funds for an emergency grant program in response to COVID-19.
Motion lay over to Tuesday.
Second.
Properly motion and second, any discussion?
Yeah, can I ask at least the question, is that, it said that 2% mandatory or required by law. It's not just out of the 2%. This is that entire reserve that has been built up. No, this is a separate account.
No, sir, this is actually out of the budget. The budget for 2020 contains a reserve amount in compliance with the Zogby law that's a shade over $5.1 million. And, you know, we've not spent that at least in the last 6 or 7 years. But it is, you know, for purposes like this. So this motion is to take $500,000 out of that line item and create a new line item for COVID-19. So it's a transfer of money that already exists in the 2020 budget.
There's two reserves. One's the required by statute, then there's the one that we have, the elective. And we chose to go out of the state statute that we have to restore at some point instead of the other one. I just wonder what the logic was there. I caught that earlier and just wonder.
Sure. Actually, it does not have to be restored. What has happened over the last 6 years at least, and probably before that, I just wouldn't know, is at the end of the year, if we do not use it, then it just becomes part of the carryover surplus. So it is born on the first day and, you know, dies on the last day. So in this case, if there were no other calls on that, we would end the year with, you know, $4.6 million or so that would expire and become surplus. So because this is already in the budget, we're asking to make this transfer within the four corners of the 2020 budget.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
I don't disagree.
Any other, so we've had the motion second, we had discussion, where are we now, Madam City Clerk?
Carry it over to Tuesday. So here
Hold
we
it
go.
over to Tuesday. Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
41324, call for public hearing to consider a special emergency grant program known as Ignite Mobile.
So move.
Second.
Been properly moved in second. Any discussion?
I just got one, if you don't mind. And that is,
Go
we
ahead, Mr.
keep
Williams.
referring to a list that I don't have. So if I could get that. And we said it does not include restaurants. But it certainly includes bar owners or bars. Is anybody else excluded that other than restaurants?
It is actually on Exhibit 2 to the resolution.
I don't have that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've got one green piece of paper that's got three headings on it. That's all I've got. And I had a application at some point. I don't that it's down here somewhere, but I don't have a page 2. Looks like Bess is sending it to me, I think.
She's talking too, but she has muted her phone.
Sorry. If you open up your Novus and go to your PDF, you'll see it. And no, I take that back. It's not in there either. The list of things.
No, it just gives me the
I'll forward
resolution.
it to you.
Okay.
We
So everybody-
did get it, though. You might know.
And this program is limited to that list that I'm about to look at?
Is limited to what the governor excluded.
Well, how do we know for certain what that is?
She named them.
She is a governor.
Yeah, she named them.
Yeah. She named them.
Yes.
Bars can't operate.
I think the city clerk is giving you that information, Mr. Williams.
I sent it to him. I
Okay.
sent it to you. You should
Right.
have it.
I do. All right. I'm looking. I've got it open. All right, so we're talking about nightclubs, bowling alleys, concert venues, tourist attractions.
I think they have a good list, John. I read it.
Yeah, and nice to have. I would have understood a little more. Okay.
All right, Madam City Clerk.
Now,
So, that concludes.
call for the vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Announcements, did I do that?
And just so everybody's clear on what we just did is we simply said that next Friday, we're going to get together and vote on this program. There's been no approvals at this point, just for people watching.
Not Friday.
Just for people
It's
watching.
not Friday.
Not Friday. It's
So-
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Friday, because
Tuesday
it's
week.
got to advertise for 7 days and it can't start till Sunday, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Tuesday, May 12th.
Yeah,
Right.
a regular meeting.
Okay,
will
we're
take
gonna
it up.
skip all the way to that Tuesday. Okay, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because of the 7-day advertising. They can't start it today.
Any announcements, Mr. Richardson,
No,
Ms. Rich?
Not an announcement, but I would like to see the legislation, kind of tweaked in order to get this clear what our intent is about making sure it gets out to the employees, not necessarily just the business owner. Is that
Yes, ma'am.
possible, Chris?
Yeah, if Chris can work with the administration, be good.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Well, I think we have a few days because I am generally in support of the idea. My concerns are with the application and someone being able to arbitrarily put in 10, get the highest amount. I'll communicate that to Ms. Henderson and to the mayor and everyone else. But I think this is a great idea. We got Mr. Richardson, Ms. Rich, Mr. Daves.
No announcements. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Vice President?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to thank the mayor and the administration for bringing this forward to the council. This is something that I'm, looking to support with the, good ideas, especially getting comments back from the public. But I do have some questions that not to be answered today, but maybe in the future about the hazardous pay, towards the city employees that's working on the front lines every day. Because I do know that question is going to come up, why, are we looking out for individual businesses and we're not taking care of our homes? So I would like for the mayor to really just, talk about that in the next couple of days, because I know that, not only myself, but other council members going to get fronted with that question, and everything. But again, I do appreciate the mayor and his administration for bringing this forth, and anything else that they do bring forth to us, looking to support, especially, getting comments back from the public. Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, mine is, I'm not sure that I'm in support of hazardous pay. That just gets into now, where do you draw the line on who's really in a hazard or not? But that's another discussion altogether. But mine is similar to that in that we've told retirees for, 10 years, 12, 17 years, that they can't have a COLA, that they got to pay their fair share of insurance. And they've been sucking it up for as long as I've been on the council. Just sucking it up. They've been suffering every stinking day, not just 7 weeks, putting their minuscule budgets together. And if we're going to find $500,000 to help people that are in need for 7 weeks, we need to find money for those who have been in need for 3 times 7 years. It's a long time to be told that we just simply can't find the money, and then all of a sudden we find it for a group of folks that have been basically impacted, seriously impacted. I'm not arguing the merit of the program. It's just that it's going to beg to question it, and I would hope that we have something for the retirees.
Well, has everyone had it? I want to make certain that I've gone around. I believe I have.
Ms. Gregory.
President.
I'm sorry, well, I can't see you, Gina. You're not on my screen. I'm sorry. Gina Gregory from the great 7th District.
No, I don't really have any announcements. I do have something that I'll share on Tuesday when more people are watching about some employees who have really gone above and beyond. But today, I just want to thank the mayor and the administration for bringing this forward. It's something that a couple of us have been talking about and wanted to try to do. We just didn't exactly know how. And I appreciate the mayor and his folks putting it together. And also, Mayor, I've seen something about you have some creative ideas to try to help the restaurants so that they can open and be socially distanced appropriately if there is some room outside, and doing something like that. because I know we're all concerned about the restaurants, even though they were not shut down necessarily. A lot of them could not stay open, and those who were doing curbside are still not making much. So if there is a way to help them out, Mayor, I really appreciate that. I know we would like to get our restaurants up and running whenever it is safe and feasible to do so. So I appreciate your efforts.
Mr. President, before you close out.
Yes, sir.
I would like to see this council pass a resolution encouraging our citizens to wear face masks. We have now we have had a greater opening of our businesses, and citizens are able to go into more businesses than we could go in the past. And I see many of them not wearing a mask. I'm not speaking of anything dealing with a penalty. I think we need to lead the way. I think they would hear us if we pass a resolution recommending that all our citizens who are going to a business, that they have a mask on. As a matter of fact, Costco said they will not let anybody in starting Monday. If you don't have a mask on, you cannot enter their store. I'm not talking about any penalty. It's sort of like what we did for these parks, and it worked. And I think it'll work again if we pass a resolution leading the way, blazing a trail, showing our citizens what they can do to protect themselves. And so I'm going to draft a resolution without a penalty, and I would like to have you all to sponsor it. I'll let you see what it is.
We look forward to getting that, Mr. Richardson. I'm sure Mr. Arch will work with you on that initiative. Thank all of you for your hard work and for taking time out of your Friday afternoons to meet, to the administration, Ms. Stimson, Mr. Anitra Bell Henderson, and Jamie Roberts, Arledge, Ricardo Woods. Thank all of you for your hard work on this. I know Chris Arledge has been working on this probably about the last 7 weeks from the first iteration of this idea, and to see it finally come to some fruition, I think is a positive step. There's still some tweaks that need to be made, but I think we have the ability to make them, and hopefully it will have as much impact in helping our business owners as our resources will allow. That kind of concludes my announcements. Well, no, I do want to go. I do want to.
I'd like,
sir.
Just when you get through, I'd like to make a concluding remark.
No issue with that. I want to. Two of my colleagues made some great points that I think ought to be taken under some consideration. The one is relative to hazard pay from Vice President Small. I don't exactly who you would include. I don't know, but I'm hopeful whether or not it's something that's permanent or something that we could give as a bonus to reward those who've been out on the front lines over the last 7 to 8 weeks. I'm hopeful that the administration will consider that and bring an initiative of that nature forward to this council. So just as quickly as we try to address this issue, we might be able to address that concern. And also with the retirees, I hadn't quite considered it from the perspective that John brought it up. But hopefully at the budget time, there'll be some further talks of that. And I'm happy to know that we have the ability to find resources so quickly. And I'm hopeful that that's a spirit that will continue. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, there's a lot of work to be done. Of course, you will meet Tuesday, have further discussions. We'll have a public hearing. As I understand it, it will be Tuesday week. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so I would like for Ricardo and Anitra, between now and then, we would like I think we're going to start the process of posting this on the website, showing which businesses are eligible to fill it out. I think that we can start taking applications and we can tee everything up so that once it is approved, that, you know, if it's direct deposit or if it's writing a check Tuesday week, when you make that decision, we could hit go and we will be processing applications and cutting checks. Is that correct, Ricardo?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Because see, what we've got to do is we have got to get vendor information for each and every one of these applicants. More than likely, most of them are not doing business with the city. If they're doing business in the city, that's a different story for us to get the funds to them. That's why we wanted you all to move quickly on the transfer, because that gives us an indication of the funds being available, and then also the notice, because that's required by law. So, you know, thank you all for taking that up so quickly and putting that on Sunday. The notice will go in the newspaper on Sunday. It'll go in the press register. From what we hear, this upcoming Tuesday, the budget transfer will be on the agenda for the second time, right. And then that can be taken up. At that point in the process, we will hopefully have already talked about this in a public setting twice, and we can get our applications out and our communication to the general public. Once we get those applications in, there's still a processing part that has to take place with not only Mr. Roberts' department, but with the finance department being able to get banking information and the proper information to make sure that we're writing the checks and producing ACHs to the proper people. Understand that not only will we get a large volume of applications we expect, but we also have to be able to prevent fraud and make sure that people aren't going through and pretending to be somebody else with a business license. So a lot of different moving pieces, but we'll go ahead and start that ball rolling at the beginning of next week.
So just for further clarification, what day will the public be able to go to the website, find an application where they can start filling it out?
We could probably do that as soon as Monday.
Okay. And, okay.
Madam, can you all furnish the council something to put on our website too? The more we put out there, the better it's going to be. If y'all could send us something, a PDF or whatever, however, and we could add that to our website, to our Facebook page too.
I have a question on that predicate. Chris, is the 7-day advertising, does it give you permission to tell people to apply? I mean, I don't want to do something that winds up embarrassing the council in any manner. So what is the reason for the 7 days?
That's what's required by the section 9401. The 7-day period is required to provide public notice that we're going to consider adopting such a program on such and such day, which is 12. So it doesn't really address whether people can apply in the meantime, one way or the other.
Well, let's do this. As a matter of fact, so what we'll do is we can wait until Tuesday to put the application on the website. That way we'll know more, and that way we don't give someone some undue embarrassment. But we can wait until Tuesday and put the application up. That way it'll give you all time to see it, give us some of your thoughts on it, and then we'll push forward. That still gives us 7 days to move forward with processing, which should be a sufficient amount of time to work.
And that would be after the council meeting on Tuesday.
That's right.
And I appreciate all the technicalities that as operators, the administration will go through to process this legislation. But do you think that the legislation should be written so that when people apply and they know exactly what the parameters are? So Chris, can you have the legislation that you think the council could review and get some feedback from council members to make sure the intent is within the legislation?
It's got the parameters on it as they currently stand on the last couple of pages. And my understanding was y'all had asked for some tweaks to that, but I can send that to you if it isn't on your copy.
Okay, in other words, you're saying that it speaks to it given out as a salary infusion for people who did not get paid in that period of time, that we're talking about why we're doing this with the public money?
It doesn't say that exactly because that just came up in the meeting
Right, but
today.
but it should probably be in the legislation.
Ms.
It
Rich,
says, go ahead.
I don't disagree with you, Ms. Rich. I have a couple of concerns relative to tweaks that I'll be talking with Mr. Arledge and Ms. Henderson about. So if we have some concerns, let's get them over to Mr. Arledge, who can relay them and get them built into what we're trying to pass, so that Tuesday is something that all of us can hopefully have buy-in on.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vice President?
I would like to ask the mayor and to make sure that this application is more than just on the website, because I know that I represent many older beauticians that do not have email address and don't know how to work the computers and don't know even how to log on. So just make sure that it's more than just one way, just for them just to log on to a website to fill out this the application process and everything. Make sure this is available for everybody. Thank you.
That's a great, and I'm hopeful the mayor will commit to that. Whether they stop it by a police precinct, we ought to find some way for those who may not have the ability with technology to get the application in.
By Tuesday, we'll tell you how we'll do that.
Sounds good. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second.
The proper motion and second. Any discussion relative to adjourning? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, before you go blowing away, can the administration give us some kind of feedback on what the 2.5 is going to be for? I mean, the 500 is going to this grant program, but it's being advertised as a $3 million program with the 2.5 in federal funds.
Yeah, that's CDBG money. Really, Jamie's here that he could address that. We can give you more information. We'll give you a little bit more right now, but we'll give you a lot more on Tuesday. But John, there's some very strict guidelines of how that money is to be distributed. And it's all comes under, the umbrella of HUD and CDBG, but we can give you the parameters of that. And just as soon as he can pull it together, we'll get it to you so we can have an open discussion on Tuesday.
Awesome, thank you.
Let me ask, Madam City Clerk, are we still live streaming?
We are.
Okay, I just wanted to, before. Okay, there's been a motion. There's a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Thank you.
Aye.